You open your lab results, and your stomach drops. Your LDL-C is highlighted in red, your doctor mentions a statin, and suddenly it feels like you are standing at the edge of a heart attack. Take a breath. The first thing I want you to know is this. A standard lipid panel is useful, but it is not the full story. LDL-C tells you how much cholesterol is being carried in the blood, but it does not tell you how many atherogenic particles are there, and it does not tell you how much of your risk is being driven by insulin resistance, inflammation, or oxidation. That is why ApoB can be so helpful. It directly reflects the number of atherogenic particles, and the cholesterol content inside LDL particles can vary a lot from person to person. I am not a doctor. This video is for educational purposes only. Never stop taking your prescribed statins or heart medications without consulting your cardiologist. Stopping abruptly can be dangerous. Your body actually needs cholesterol to survive. Cholesterol is part of cell membranes, hormones, and bile acid production. So the goal is not to panic over one number on a report. The goal is to understand the whole particle story. How many particles are circulating, what kind they are, and whether the environment inside your body is making them more likely to become damaged. In people with insulin resistance, the blood tends to shift toward more small, dense LDL particles, and those particles are more prone to oxidation. Oxidized LDL is strongly linked with the atherosclerotic process. So the real question is not, is my LDL-C number a little high? The real question is, what is driving my cardiovascular risk underneath that number? Let's make this simple. Imagine your cholesterol is not one thing floating around in your blood. Imagine it as cargo moving on a waterway. The cholesterol itself is the cargo. The LDL particles are the boats carrying that cargo. And here is the problem with the standard test. It mostly tells you how much cargo is inside the water, but it does not tell you how many boats are actually out there. That matters, because cardiovascular risk is driven not just by the amount of cholesterol carried, but by the number of atherogenic particles circulating in the bloodstream. ApoB is valuable because each atherogenic particle carries one ApoB molecule, so ApoB functions as a direct count of those particles. So when you see an LDL-C number on a standard panel, that number can be misleading if you do not know the particle count behind it. In some people, the LDL particles are relatively cholesterol-rich, so the LDL-C number looks high even though the particle number is not as extreme. In other people, the particles are cholesterol-poor but numerous, which can create a very different risk picture. That is why ApoB can reveal what the standard panel hides. How many atherogenic particles are actually in circulation? Think of it this way. 100 big boats carrying cargo may create less opportunity for damage than 1,000 tiny boats constantly bumping into the artery wall. The concern is not just how much cholesterol is present. The concern is how many particles are trying to deliver it, because more ApoB-containing particles means more chances to enter the artery wall and contribute to plaque formation. That is why many cardiology sources describe ApoB as a direct measure of atherogenic particle number. And this is where the story gets even more important. In people with insulin resistance, triglycerides tend to run higher and the LDL pattern often shifts towards smaller, denser particles. Cardiometabolic disease is frequently associated with this more atherogenic profile, including high triglycerides, higher ApoB, and small dense LDL. Now, here is the key idea. Not all LDL particles behave the same way. People often talk about pattern A and pattern B to describe LDL size. Pattern A is larger and more buoyant. Pattern B is smaller and denser. The smaller, denser particles are generally considered more atherogenic because they are more likely to penetrate the arterial wall, and oxidation makes LDL even more dangerous. So when I say, boats, I want you to picture this carefully. A big boat is not automatically bad. A tiny boat is not automatically fatal. The real issue is the combination of particle number, particle size, and the biological environment they are traveling through. If that environment is full of sugar swings, inflammation, and insulin resistance, those particles are more likely to become damaged. That is why an advanced lipid discussion is not about fear. It is about precision. ApoB tells you how many atherogenic particles are there. Particle size tells you how likely those particles are to behave badly. And the standard LDL-C number, by itself, cannot always show you that full picture. This is not about ignoring your lab results. It is about reading them more intelligently. So if your doctor said, your LDL is over 100, do not let that sentence send you into panic. The better question is, how many atherogenic particles do I have? Is my ApoB elevated? Am I dealing with insulin resistance or a pattern of small, dense LDL? That is the level of detail that starts to explain real risk. And that is why ApoB has become such an important marker in modern lipidology. Now let's go deeper, because this is where everything starts to click. Not all LDL is created equal. When most people hear bad cholesterol, they imagine one single thing. But in reality, LDL particles exist on a spectrum. And for simplicity, we often group them into two patterns: Pattern A and Pattern B. Pattern A refers to large, buoyant LDL particles. Think of these as big, soft, fluffy boats. They carry cholesterol, yes, but because of their size and structure, they tend to move through the bloodstream without easily penetrating the arterial wall. They are less likely to get trapped, and less likely to contribute to plaque formation under normal conditions. Pattern B, on the other hand, is very different. These are small, dense LDL particles. Imagine tiny, compact boats. More numerous, more aggressive, and much more likely to slip through the tiny gaps in your artery lining. Because of their size, they can penetrate the endothelium more easily and linger where they shouldn't. But here is the part most people are never told. Size alone is not the full story. A small LDL particle is not automatically dangerous just because it is small. The real danger begins when that particle becomes damaged. And in cardiovascular science, that damage has a name: oxidation. Think of oxidation like rust. Just like metal exposed to oxygen and moisture begins to corrode, LDL particles exposed to a toxic internal environment begin to oxidize. They become unstable, inflamed, and far more likely to trigger an immune response inside your arteries. And this is what drives plaque formation. When LDL becomes oxidized, your immune system sees it as a threat. White blood cells rush in to deal with it. They engulf the oxidized LDL, turning into what we call foam cells, and over time, this process builds the fatty streaks and plaques that narrow arteries. Not because cholesterol exists, but because it became damaged. So now we need to ask the most important question: what causes LDL to oxidize in the first place? Because this is where your real control begins. The answer is not simply dietary fat. The answer is your metabolic environment. High blood sugar, frequent insulin spikes, chronic inflammation. These conditions create oxidative stress in the bloodstream, making LDL particles, especially small dense ones, far more vulnerable to oxidation. This is why insulin resistance is such a powerful driver of cardiovascular risk. When your body struggles to manage blood sugar, it shifts your lipid profile toward higher triglycerides, more small dense LDL, and a more inflammatory environment. It is not just about cholesterol anymore. It is about how your entire metabolic system is functioning. So let's bring this together. Pattern A, large, buoyant LDL, generally moves through your bloodstream with less risk. Pattern B, small, dense LDL, has more potential to cause problems. But the real tipping point is oxidation. A non-oxidized particle is far less dangerous than an oxidized one. And this is the moment where most people feel a sense of relief. Because if oxidation is the real problem, then you are not powerless. This is not just about a number on a lab report. This is about understanding what is happening inside your body, and what you can begin to influence. So instead of asking, "Is my LDL high?" a more powerful question is my LDL being damaged? Am I living in a metabolic state that promotes oxidation? Because that is where the real story of heart disease begins. Now we get to the part that actually helps people change their risk. If you remember only one thing from this chapter, remember this. Managing cardiovascular risk is not only about lowering a lab value. It is about lowering the conditions that make LDL particles more likely to become damaged in the first place. Modern cardiology recognizes ApoB as a direct measure of atherogenic particle number, which is why it gives a clearer picture than LDL-C alone in many patients. But I need to say this clearly before we go further. Never stop your prescribed statin or heart medication on your own. Medication and lifestyle are not enemies. They are partners. Medication lowers risk in one way, and lifestyle lowers risk in another way. Your doctor is managing the numbers and the event risk. Your daily habits are managing the terrain those particles travel through. Here is the problem I want you to understand. If your body is stuck in a state of insulin resistance, the bloodstream becomes more inflammatory, triglycerides tend to rise, and LDL particles are more likely to shift toward the small dense pattern that is more prone to oxidation. That metabolic environment is strongly associated with oxidized LDL and a more atherogenic profile. So yes, statins can help lower ApoB-containing particles and can even reduce circulating oxidized LDL in some studies. But that does not mean the story ends there. If the internal environment is still high in sugar swings, inflammation, and oxidative stress, then the particles that remain are still being exposed to the same damaging conditions. Lifestyle changes can reduce circulating oxidized LDL, especially when they improve the metabolic syndrome picture. That is why I use the phrase manage the oxidation. Not because I think cholesterol is the enemy. It is not. Cholesterol is essential. The issue is when cholesterol is carried in a particle that becomes oxidized, trapped, and inflammatory. Oxidized LDL is implicated in atherogenesis, and the metabolic syndrome is associated with higher circulating oxidized LDL and higher cardiovascular risk. This is where an educational lifestyle blueprint can be helpful as an adjunct to your doctor's care. A good blueprint does not promise miracles. It helps you identify the inputs that drive oxidation. Excess refined sugar, highly processed carbohydrates, frequent eating that keeps insulin elevated, poor sleep, inactivity, and inflammatory dietary patterns. The goal is to create a calmer metabolic environment so your particles are less likely to oxidize. That is the support role lifestyle plays. And this matters because the evidence keeps pointing in the same direction. When metabolic health improves, oxidized LDL tends to improve too. Weight loss and other lifestyle interventions have been associated with lower circulating oxidized LDL, while insulin resistance and impaired glycemic control are linked with increased LDL oxidation. So when someone tells you, your LDL is high, just panic. That is not a complete conversation. A more useful conversation sounds like this. What is my ApoB? Do I have small dense LDL? Is insulin resistance driving oxidation? What can I do daily to support the treatment plan my doctor has already given me? That is the smarter, calmer, more modern way to think about cardiovascular prevention. That is exactly why the Oxidized Cholesterol Strategy exists as an educational support tool. It is not a replacement for medical care. It is a lifestyle framework designed to help you reduce the biological conditions that encourage oxidation, so you can work in parallel with your physician's treatment plan instead of feeling powerless in front of a red lab report. Remember this. Medication helps manage the numbers, but your lifestyle helps manage the oxidation. And when you address both, you give your cardiovascular system a far better chance than chasing one outdated number on a standard panel. This video is for information only. Keep following your cardiologist's guidance. Keep taking prescribed medication unless your doctor tells you otherwise, and use lifestyle changes as support for better metabolic health, not as a substitute for medical care. So here is the grounding truth. Stop fearing healthy fats and start paying attention to the biology that actually drives risk: high particle number, insulin resistance, and oxidation. ApoB gives a clearer count of atherogenic particles than LDL-C alone in many people, which is why asking about ApoB is a smart next step when you want a more complete picture. So what should you ask your doctor? Ask whether you should get an advanced lipid evaluation that includes ApoB, triglycerides, and other markers that help clarify your atherogenic risk. That is not because the standard panel is worthless. It is because the standard panel is incomplete. And what should you focus on day to day? Focus on the habits that improve the metabolic environment: reducing refined sugar, lowering frequent glucose spikes, improving sleep, moving your body consistently, and choosing whole foods that support better triglycerides and insulin sensitivity. When that environment improves, oxidized LDL tends to become less of a problem, because you are no longer feeding the conditions that make LDL more vulnerable to damage. That is the real message of this video. Your lab report is not a verdict. It is a map, and if your map shows higher LDL-C, that does not mean panic. It means you need a deeper conversation about particle number, particle behavior, and metabolic root causes. Oxidized LDL is strongly implicated in atherosclerosis, which is why reducing the conditions that promote oxidation matters so much. Medication can absolutely be part of that strategy. Statins and other heart medications are often used to lower cardiovascular risk, and you should never change or stop them without your cardiologist's guidance. Lifestyle does not replace medical care. Lifestyle supports it. Medication manages the numbers, but your daily choices help manage the oxidation. If you want one final sentence to remember, let it be this: do not obsess over a single LDL-C number. Ask better questions. Ask about ApoB. Ask about insulin resistance. Ask about the conditions that turn a cholesterol problem into an oxidation problem. Then work with your doctor on a plan that treats both the numbers and the biology behind them. Check the link in the description for the Oxidized Cholesterol Strategy, an educational lifestyle blueprint designed to help you support healthier metabolism and reduce the internal conditions that promote oxidation, alongside, never instead of, your doctor's care. I am not a doctor. This video is for educational purposes only. Never stop taking your prescribed statins or heart medications without consulting your cardiologist. Any lifestyle changes mentioned here are meant to support your treatment plan, not replace it.